Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. Today we are talking about hiring without the headache. So let's be honest, I think that one of the most uncomfortable things is when you realize that you've hired the wrong person, or when you realize things that are not going well in your business or with your team are your fault. And I would say that hiring and learning to lead well is one of the most untalked about things in entrepreneurship, especially for those of us who started as solopreneurs and were just doing the damn thing and then, grew and realized, okay, I need help. And then you're like fumbling around trying to figure out, okay, I still have to do my job. I have to teach somebody else how to do these things that I've always done. They don't do it in the way that I want them to. Like, is this the right person? Like, how do I do this? It's a lot, right? Add in trying to be a parent, and it's just this whole cycle of really, I think that a lot of people don't hire because it feels like it's harder to do. Like, people wait too long to hire the people that they need because it is and can feel like a second job to hire and onboard somebody, especially when you do it well. So I know that for me, I did my first few years of business as a solopreneur. And then I remember that hiring was really brought on for me almost from a place of desperation, because I was so busy and had so much going on that I was like, I can't maintain what I'm trying to do and do all the things that I need to do in the business. So at the time, I was probably around 2 or 3 years into my business. I was competing in powerlifting. I was competing in figure. So fun facts, in my fitness days. And I, had this full roster of women. And then I was getting so many inquiries that, like, I just found myself, I remember being so frustrated because I was spending so much time in my email. And this is this is back in like 2014, 2015. So we didn't have all the like systems automations. If they existed, I had no idea about them. So I was just like, I need help. Right. And so this hiring, basically from desperation, was just like, okay, I just need anybody that can like just help me. Just help me. And it's kind of like, if we really think about that, because so many women do this, it's just like you're overbooked. You've experienced like hyper growth in the business where it's so fast where you can't keep up. And it's just like you're in this situation where you're just like, help me. Right. And if you step back and think about that from like a relationship standpoint of like desperation, to where it's almost just like, I'll just take whatever at this point, right? Like, just give me whatever. It's so not healthy, and rarely is it going to turn out in the way that we want it to. And so, but that's where most people hire from, right? They're just like, okay, we're so busy, versus being in a place to where you hire beforehand, like before you even have necessarily maybe a full position, and you're like, okay, let's build this out together, which is kind of what I've gone to personally. Is like, okay, there's a little bit of like an overlap here, a little bit of a gap that's like, I don't think this is a full-time position, but we could use a few hours here and have people specialize in these roles. And so all of that being said, I brought somebody on, and there was no like, oh, okay, I have an employee now, so how do I lead them well? I was just like trying to do my job, and didn't realize the importance, or think about in that time, the importance of how I was delegating, how I was leading. There was so much that I missed. And even, throughout the years at this point, because this year is going to be 12 years, 13 years of being an entrepreneur, 12 years of being online as a coach, I've made quite a few mistakes when it comes to hiring. And I think that, if I'm being honest, I could contribute those mistakes, like, could always come back to me in some way. Not that the other people it's not about anybody being wrong necessarily, but I think that a lot of times as leaders, we don't take ownership or accountability because we don't realize that it's us, because we don't realize the position that we're in when we're hiring, right? So I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what my leadership style was. I had no idea about anything when it came to running a team. And so, like most things, for me, I learned and have learned so much just from experience and just from like putting myself in uncomfortable situations and adapting and figuring things out, and frankly, like fucking up a lot, failing a lot, to see what doesn't work. And that's one of the big advantages my clients have, is like, hey, I've done that before. Here's how it went, because I've done a lot of different things. So I think when it comes to hiring, and one of the biggest ways for us to alleviate the headache that is hiring is to hire before you feel ready, before it feels so busy. Like, don't wait until you can't maintain the workload to hire somebody. Because what will happen is, if you are trying to maintain the workload and say, okay, well, I'm trying to wait till I'm, past this capacity. And of course, just pause for a second. It needs to financially make sense. And I think anybody listening to this, since my clients are established and profitable, that's not an issue, but I feel like I just have to say that. Like, I think it's not smart when people are going into debt to hire somebody, unless it's a startup, which is a whole different conversation. So, all that being said, yes, it needs to make financial sense. I can totally understand, okay, I need to be, profiting this much to be able to pay, except hiring correctly, be that a coach or, somebody on your team, should make you money back. And, a lot of people, including myself, have worked with coaches and had relationships that did not provide the ROI. And I think a lot of people have been burned by that. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of a conversation right now. But what I will say is that there are coaches like me who hold themselves to a certain standard of being able to provide ROI. And sometimes that ROI is in profits, a lot of times. But I just think it's important, just like it's important for us to be clear when we work with clients on like what the expectations are. I think it's important for coaches to be clear on like what clients can expect. I think that profitability is such a result of how your business is structured, and if it's set up for sustainability and longevity. And a lot of people aren't considering those things. So, all of that being said, hiring, making it less of a headache, we need to think about and be aware of gaps and things that we are doing that are taking away from the things that really move the needle in our business, aka like when I was drowning in my email. Yes, my email was important at that time because there was inquiries that were flooding in. But at that time, this is so crazy to say, but at that time, I just had so many inquiries that all I was doing was like, thanks for inquiring, here's my price sheet. Like, it was just like so transactional, which is not how I do anything at this point, but again, long time ago. So I think it's like, but that was what caused frustration for me, is that was taking away from time that I could have been spent with my clients, right? And that's the opposite of what we want to do. My clients are my greatest return on investment. And that is why I want to spend the most time with them, because spending time with my clients, which is why, when somebody signs on with me, I fly to them and I spend a full day with them. Like, spending time with my clients and building that relationship, it's so important to me. And I think that by doing that, it creates a relationship that, is built on such trust and such loyalty that is where my results, like, we can get better results with that client, which then creates further referrals for me, right? So hiring, we have to think before we're ready. We have to think about, we can't just wait until the team that we have in place or we are so overwhelmed to bring people on. And we also don't need to just keep people on because we like them. That's something that I've done a lot, honestly. I would say that's my weakness is I love and I love hard. And, bringing that into my business is not healthy. So just I've learned a lot from my mistakes in this. And a couple of my clients have been on experienced that hyper growth and just hired people. And again, it just goes back to the desperation. We just don't want to be in that place when we're making any sort of decisions, honestly. So hiring's hard. It takes a lot of work to interview. It takes a lot of work to onboard. It takes a lot of work to train, to empower, to coach people up, to get them, trained to meet the standards that we expect. It's a lot of work, like in hopes that the person works out. And so how can we hire better? How can we find the person that is the best fit when we are hiring? And I think the first part of that is us not being in that state of desperation when we go into hiring. And then the next step I would say is getting full clarity before you hire. So many people know that they need help, but they don't know exactly what they need. They don't know how they need it. They don't know what gap it's going to fill. They are bringing people and hiring people on into essentially murkiness. And I know this because I've done it, right? And I think this is the role, right? Especially when we're building out new roles, right? That's really difficult because they're like, I don't know exactly what I want you to be doing or what the task looks like. But I think there's a lot of room for full transparency and vulnerability in leadership too. And so first, make sure that you're in a place to where you're not like hiring from a place of desperation, because if you're in that place, clarity is going to be hard across the board, but getting clear on what you need is really, really important. I would say, it's one thing to craft the role and the responsibilities, but even prior to that, like, what are you seeing in the business? Like, what growth do you want to see? What area? What gaps do you have in the business? Where are you losing time? Where are you losing money? Like, getting really clear on those things so you can make sure that it's like, do you need a marketing person? Do you need a social media manager? Those are like, a marketing strategist, social media manager, like getting clear on who you need, right? Based upon what your expectations are and where you want to grow and how you want to grow. If you don't have clarity on that, then you're probably just going to hire the wrong role, right? You're going to hire the wrong role and then you're going to be frustrated because you're like, well, I'm not getting these results, but the results that you wanted were not meant to be from that person. We have to understand that a lot of people looking for jobs, they're in a position to where they're like, okay, I could probably mold myself to fit this role. And like, who can blame them? They want to get paid. And so it's like making sure that you are really, really clear up front. So you know that you need help, but you need to know exactly what you need help with and what your expectations are from getting this help. And then from that, then you can build out the actual role and responsibilities. I feel like I say this every episode, or probably will, but you have full permission to create any sort of role, right? I have, at this point, read a lot of leadership books and just have a greater understanding, but I love hearing things like when people create, like, this is our fun advisor, or like, just all these roles that you think of, like, you get to make your own rules. This is your business, right? And so if you write the roles and the responsibilities and the tasks that they will have and see kind of what bucket that falls into that's like known, right? Then you can find that exact person as long as you're clear about you have to be able to do these things. So first get clear on those gaps that you need to fill and what your expectations are. Then you can write out, okay, what is the role? What are the responsibilities going to be? What are the tasks going to be on a recurring basis, on a project basis, and get really clear on those things. And then like, what strengths do you need from this person? And then clarifying what are your non-negotiables, right? We think about when we're hiring, we think a lot about the role itself, right? We think about, okay, we want them to be able to check these boxes. We got to think about the person too, like the person behind the role. And so it's important to say, okay, well, in order for them to do this level of work or this type of work well, they need to have this trait or be this kind of person. So like for my team, I need my team to be like ambitious. I need them to be go-getters. I need them to like be creative thinkers, because part of my business is I run my business like very collaboratively. Yes, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder, I'm the coach, but I'm not above anybody. Like this is a table that we're all sitting at, and I want each of these people in their zone of genius and be able to express their creative ideas, because that fuels the business. I don't want to be the one that's like this like authoritarian, like here's what we're doing and here's how we do it. Yes, I get a lot of those ideas, but then I bring them to my team and I'm like, what do you guys think about this? Or what would you add? Or what would you do differently? And then I also ask my team, here's the goals. How should we reach them? And I think a lot of people just honestly don't utilize their team to their full potential. So you want to know what your non-negotiables are for working on your team. What's important for your team culture? What strengths does this person need to have? And what are non-negotiables for you? What are the things that you will not bend on, and what are the things that you will? Right? So I personally would always rather have somebody that has a little less experience but is excited, that really wants to do their job, because to me that they're going to be maybe less efficient at first, but they're going to be more effective in the long run because they have this eagerness to learn, versus somebody who is like, they may have a lot of experience. Sure, maybe they deliver good work, but it's like the connection isn't there. And so we all have our personal, preferences in that area, and that's just mine. So you're going to write out those roles and responsibilities. You're going to clarify like what your non-negotiables are. You're going to think about, okay, what strengths does this person need to have? What kind of person do they need to really be? And then after you have clarified all of that, then you make a job posting. So many people just make a job posting like up front. And it's like, again, the biggest problem that I see with hiring is that people aren't clear enough before they hire, right? So when you do a job posting, you will now have the roles and responsibilities. You'll now have like, okay, you need to be this type of person. And there's a couple things that I do specifically in job postings that I think are really important. Number one, I always put like about me and my story and my mission. And that is one of the things that I get a lot of feedback on and get a lot of applicants every time I post a job. And have even had like, people on my social media message me and be like, I would love to work for you one day, because they have buy-in to my mission. They know that like I'm here to help people and people want to be a part of that. And so I think a lot of people are missing out by like not posting enough about like the company and the business and who would you be working for, and what is the mission of the business and why does it matter, right? People care, and so people want to know those things. So I think posting your story as the CEO, as the founder, and then also I really prefer people that are detail oriented, also knowing that people are human and they're going to make mistakes. That's just part of it. And we have to have a certain level of tolerance for that. But one of the things that I do is in the middle of a job posting, I will put specific instructions. And it really helps to filter people out, honestly, of like, well, I gave specific instructions and you didn't follow them. So I will put something like begin your response with, in some sort of phrase. So anybody that doesn't do that, unfortunately, is not an applicant. Because I'm like, if you don't care enough to read this entire job posting, you don't really care about the job, right? So to me, there's a level of effort that they put in up front that really shows me their potential. And so those are two things that I do in job postings that have served me really well and gotten me some really great people that are on my team now. And then, so that can filter people out. That will help you kind of come down to your final few people. And then you go into like the interview process. And so in the interview process, people are really missing the mark by not asking questions to figure out more about what people can do and more about what people can become. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we're asking questions, again, based upon past experience. So you've done this. What platforms have you worked on? Who did you work for? What is this? What are results that you've gotten? Yada, 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 right? And that's great. Cool. It's an important part of it to know that there's like, okay, we have somebody with experience in the things that we're looking for, but we need to ask more strategic questions about what is possible for them to become. I mentioned earlier that I would always rather hire somebody that's like excited, that wants to learn and wants to grow. So like asking people like, what are your long-term goals? Like, what's your bigger vision? How, if this were to happen, like, what would you do? Like being able to see people in real time solve a problem or creatively think, or I will ask something like, okay, let's say we have a campaign running and this happens, like what would you do? Or we're not on track to hit a goal, like what would you say we could do? And just like getting them to like spitball ideas and just seeing like, again, like how they think, like how creative are they, like what are their answers like? These sorts of questions, I think, tell us so much more about a person. When you like can see the potential in somebody and you're like, okay, they have the background, the bones are there, but like they want it. And like if you give them the space and the freedom to be collaborative and to bring ideas and to really and foster that creativity, like they can fly, right? And that to me is invaluable, right? To have people that can voice their ideas and opinions. And one of the things that I do is after I go through the interview process, I will, extend an offer and I will send the roles and the responsibilities that I've written out, very clearly, like this is the role, this is what you would be doing, the pay structure, all of that kind of stuff. And at the top of it, it says like, our team and like that we operate as like we have an open communication policy, and what that looks like is that like you are required to openly communicate, and if you have things that you want to share, like not only do I want you to share them, I need you to share them. That is part of our culture, is feeling like you can always come to me with anything that you have and you'll be heard, right? And so I think that there's a lot of it is like just humanizing this process, honestly. It's about being clear beforehand. I always say like clarity on the front end is going to prevent problems on the back end. And so if we really think about hires that you've had or team members that you've had that didn't work out for, I'm sure there's multiple reasons, but there's probably a few times where you could have been a better leader, where you could have given them more clear direction, or better direction, or any direction, right? Like there's always something that we could do better. Interview process, asking those questions, onboarding process, again, clarity, like making sure that they are set up, like making sure that you have an onboarding process for them, making sure that you're available, which can be the hard part when we're busy, right? Don't expect people to just like, I love just throwing my team members in and being like, okay, jumping in, like your tasks are in our project management. There's, descriptions there, but like, let me know if you have questions. And like giving them that like freedom to fly, but also knowing that like between appointments, I'm going to check on them and make sure that they're good and they're not spinning their wheels, especially in the beginning. That is basically the process that I go through and the things that have been super helpful for me and having a good team in place. And there's so much more that goes into, it's probably a separate episode about like once you have them onboarded, kind of like keeping good team culture. I will say that, I think having that open communication policy and just letting people know, like I always repeat, like there's no hierarchy here. Like you and your ideas are some of the most important things to me, especially as I have people who have worked with me for long periods of time. Like, you know me sometimes probably better than I know myself. You're seeing my content, like, you hear me spitballing ideas, like, tell me what you think. And like, them feeling like that they can tell me the truth is really important too. So if you're getting a lot of team turnover, something to think about is just always ask yourself the question of like, what is a you problem and what is a them problem, right? Because there's sometimes that people are just not a good fit, and that's okay. It's just like any other relationship, right? Where it's like, they just don't fit. Like, we are a team of like, we communicate frequently and we get excited and we support each other, and like, if somebody wants to work like in a dark corner and not talk to anybody, they're probably not for my team, right? And that's okay if that's who they are. So if you always can take accountability and ownership for what's yours and ask the question of like, okay, what could I have done better? Like, what was it about them that wasn't a good fit? But what was it about me that didn't lead them well? You're just going to keep getting better. I don't think any of us at any point like reach a point where we're like, all right, I'm the best at this, right? Like, no matter how good we are at our work, like, I feel like that I am an incredible coach, not to toot my own horn, but toot because I've been doing this for a long time. And I still am learning. I still am growing, and I never will stop because I feel like I owe that to my clients. So ownership is leadership. You probably aren't being clear enough or haven't been clear enough or did not communicate well, right? And so if we can just own that, then we can do better, right? Because that's the goal, is we want to have team members that want to be with us for a long time. So think about the hires that you've made and didn't work out. Think about what could you have done better. Think about where could you have been more clear at any part of the process with them. And then, make sure that you're being preventative and taking care of yourself, and that your business is structured in a way to where you're not constantly overwhelmed and you're not hiring from that place of overwhelm, because that's going to be really hard to get clarity on who and when you need to hire if that is always standing. And then make sure that you're assessing those gaps right now and creating that specific role. So, I mean, if you can't see those gaps, you might be too in your business and you need to kind of step out and assess. You can also gather feedback from your team members. I think that that's something that I've done before, is kind of like, what tasks are you loving? What are you hating? And like gauging those things to see, okay, well, this person hates this and this person hates this. And not that I'm going to always create a role for that, but I genuinely want to keep my people happy. And so if there's a way for me to have people doing more of what they love and give them space to grow into things they want to, I like to foster that. So get clear before you post any sort of position. Make sure that you ask questions so that the non-negotiables that you have and the potential of the person in front of you is at the forefront. On board with clear expectations, and make sure you're giving them that emotional buy-in that makes them feel like they're part of something. Take accountability when you fuck up, because you will. Like, people respect that. Like, I've been at points, I'm human. So it's like, I'm not going to be great all the time. I've had off days to where I'm just like, man, I put some stuff in the project management, or I like delegated tasks and was not clear. Like, that's on me. I'm so sorry about that. Like, people totally respect that. And that's what I mean about like us needing more vulnerability in leadership, regardless of the size of our team. Just being a human and saying, I didn't do so well with that. I could be better here. I think that people really, really respect that. So thank you guys for listening. I hope this is helpful in hiring. I know that it's not the most fun thing to do. I know it's necessary for us to continue to grow and make sure that we have the right people in the right roles to foster the growth and the impact that we want. This should make it much easier for you and give you some things to think about. So thanks for listening. And next week, we're going to talk about actually building your CEO schedule to include time freedom. Obviously, I talk a lot about time freedom and aligning that with your financial freedom. But a lot of people are overwhelmed with like, how do I actually build that schedule? What does that look like? And so we're going to get into the nitty gritty there. And I'm going to help kind of walk you through how you can build that schedule for yourself and what you need to be able to build it. And of course, I love to connect with you guys. Please, please, please screenshot, tag the Mom Founders Table on Instagram, and share your takeaways with me. Share your insights, send me your questions, let me know topics that you want to hear. I love being able to create things that are actually helpful. And so make sure that you are communicating what you need from me and let me help you out. So thank you again for listening. Make sure that you post and connect with me on there. And last but not least, if you have not grabbed the Female Founders Freedom Framework, that is my guide to, it's the keys to the kingdom, y'all. It is me taking 12 years of entrepreneurship and everything that I've figured out on navigating business and entrepreneurship and how to create a more freedom-based business that gives you flexibility, that gives you and allows you peace and presence and calmness and gives you kind of the separation that we need and the balance when you're juggling all of these things. And so it is going to give you the 8 key areas that you need to address. And in those 8 areas, what exactly you need to do in your business to have more freedom and flexibility. And it's free. So I will drop the link for that in the show notes so you can go and grab it today and enjoy. It will change the way that you lead your business and the way that you live your life. So thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next week.